Hello friends and welcome to Edupedia World Videos. This is the chapter 4 of the course Basics of Programming in C Language. This chapter discusses the topic the structure of a C program. Now, what are the components in a C program? So these are the preprocessor commands, functions, blocks, keywords, variables and constants, statements and expressions, and comments. Now we will discuss what are these components one by one in detail. Okay, first is the preprocessor commands. Now these commands tell the compiler to do the pre-processing before doing the actual compilation. So these commands never become the part of your end compiled program. Okay, it only remains in your source code. Compiler reads it and understands how you want it to compile your program, and then it ignores it. It will not include the preprocessor commands in your compiled program. Okay, now one example of preprocessor commands is hash include stdio.h, which tells the compiler to include the header file stdio.h. Hash is a prefix to every preprocessor command. So every preprocessor command must begin with hash. Okay, so we go ahead, and this is functions. Okay, functions are the main building blocks of any C program. Every C program will have one or more functions, and the main function is a mandatory function for any C program. The main function must be there because this acts as the entry point for your code. That is, your compiler will make your program such a way that the first line of the main program becomes the first instruction of your program. Okay, so when your OS runs your program, it will straight away go to the first line of the main program, and if the main program is not there, the compiler will give you an error. Okay, this function is prefixed with the keyword int. Okay, so why it is prefixed with the keyword int, you will come to know about this later in a few slides. Okay, for the time being, let us just understand the basic that this means that the function returns an integer value when it exits. Okay, this integer value is returned using the return statement. So return is a keyword which is specifically used to return some value from a function. Now these all statements must sound a little alien to you at this moment of time, but as we proceed further with our course, we will learn each and every of these statements. So don't worry about them if you are finding any difficulty to understand what this is trying to say. Now the types of functions. One is the library functions. Okay, what are the library functions? These are the functions that are built in the C language library itself. Okay, so these are pre-built functions. These are made by the people who have written the C language. So you can use these functions for specific tasks, and there are various libraries available with the C language like stdio, which is standard input output. Okay, so what does that do? That provides you some functions for standard input and output. So taking input from the user, there is a function for that. To display in output to user, there is a function for that. But to use these library functions, you must remember that you have to include the respective header files. So you have to search in the C reference that which functions are included in which header files, and those header files you have to include in your code by the hash include statement. Okay, this is a preprocessor directive, and you have to specify hash include stdio.h if you have to use any input and output related functions in your program. Similarly, if you have to use some mathematical functions like sine, cosine, tangent, logarithm, if you want to use all that functionality, you will have to include math.h, math.h. When you become worse with C language programming, when you become more trained into C language programming, you will actually remember all these files because of your experience. It comes with your experience. Till that time, you can take reference from the books, from this tutorial, and from the internet, of course, to find out which library file, which header file contains which library functions. Another type of functions is the user-defined functions. User-defined functions are those, as the name suggests, that are defined by the users themselves. So if I want to perform a particular task repetitively in my program, what I will do is I will just define a function for that task, and I can, whenever I want to, suppose I want to add any two numbers, okay, so I will write a function to add those two numbers, and whenever I want to add any two numbers, I will just call that function. Instead of again writing the code to add two numbers, I will just call that function of mine which I had already created. This makes the programs shorter, okay, because the code is less repeated. So in case you have to perform some task time and again, you don't have to write all the code again and again for that. So this will make your code shorter, readable, and efficient. Okay. Moreover, this will also improve the efficiency and the readability of the code. We shall study about these functions in detail later in a whole chapter which is dedicated to functions. Okay. Now blocks. So blocks are nothing but any set of statements which are enclosed by the curly braces. So this is the opening brace over here. Okay, here your statements are there, and here is the closing brace. So even a function is defined inside a block. You will learn as you go the usages of the blocks. Okay, so here now we come to keywords. Now keywords are certain fixed predefined words in C language which are reserved for specific purposes. Some examples of the keywords include for, if, while, go to, return, etc. You will learn about the functionality of each of these keywords as we proceed further with our tutorial. Now variables and constants. So variables are used to hold the numbers, strings. Strings means names, words, or other texts, okay, and other complex data for manipulation. Okay, so whatever data you have to use in your program, you have to store it into a certain variable. Each variable has a data type in C. Okay, so you will also study about data types and variables in a separate chapter, but for the time being, understand that each variable has a data type. The data type tells the compiler that what kind of value will be held by that variable. Will it hold a name of a person? In that case, the data type will be something like a string. Will it hold the age of a person, for which you have to store a number, and the data type would be integer or something like that? We will see when we go into detail of data types. Constants are those expressions which are explicitly, specified in the statement. Suppose I write a is equal to 10. So 10 over there is constant and a is a variable. So 10 is a constant. Moreover, there are some other types of constants. You can also declare variables as constants, and you can also specify constants using your preprocessor directives. Okay, these are known as macros. This also we shall study later in our course. Apart from variables and constants, there are statements and expressions. Now expressions are meaningful combination of variables, constants, and keywords to perform some calculations. Okay, so these are meaningful combinations. So whenever you write a line in C language, when you are using the combination of variables, constants, and keywords to perform a calculation, it is known as an expression. Like variable a plus 10. Now this is an expression. This is a variable which you are using. Okay, this is an operator which we will study about the operators also in detail in our coming chapters, and this 10 is a constant. So this whole becomes an expression. Statements are expressions or assignments or function calls or control flow statements which make up the C programs. Okay, so these are various types of statements which will form a part of a C program. Now expressions also are a type of a statement. Okay, like result is equal to variable a plus variable b is a statement. Okay, note that it is always mandatory to terminate a statement using a semicolon at the end. Okay, so that is how your compiler will determine that okay, one statement is over and another statement will begin after the semicolon. Comments. Comments are used to give additional useful information inside a C program for better understanding by the user reading the program. So comments are only meant for human beings. Okay, only meant for human readers. They are useless to the compiler, and the compiler will ignore the comments. So these are only for better readability of the program. Suppose you want to mention that what function a particular block is doing, so that you will mention in a comment, so that whenever another person is reading that program, he understands what is being done over here in this part of the code. And compiler will neither it will read those, nor your comments will become the part of the compiled program. Something more about the comments. Now, single lines, you can either use single line comments or the multiple line comments in C language. Single line means that the comment is only extending to one line. So this can be done using two forward slashes, okay, before the line. Prefixing any line with two forward slashes will turn it into a commented line. So this will be ignored by the compiler. Now this line is a comment and will be ignored by the compiler. In case you want to use a multiple lined comment, you want to write a lot of information in your comment, so you have to use a multiple line comment, and this must be enclosed in a combination of forward slash and asterisk, and this will begin your multiple line comment, and it will be ended by the reverse of this, just the reverse of this, first the asterisk and then the forward slash. An example has been given here, forward slash star. These lines are commented and these will be ignored by the compiler. Star and forward slash has ended, so this is also a comment. Okay, now we come to some guidelines of C language programming. Okay, this will tell us something about C language, the things which we must remember while coding in C. So C is a case sensitive language, means that C does not deal with capital C and small c in a same manner. So C does not assume that capital letter and small letter are same. May be it capital A and small a, both are different for C. So if you have variable names or function names, one starting with small letter and other having capital letter, both will be different for C. For example, printf with a small p and printf with a capital P will be different. C has a free form line structure, so that means that end of each C statements must be, as we have already learned, it should be a semicolon. So, and moreover, white spaces or tabs or spacebar, these are always ignored by the compiler. Now multiple statements can be on the same line, okay, like we have here as an example, that one statement is a is equal to b plus c, the second statement is a is equal to a plus 10. Both are on the same line, but you have to remember that each statement is terminated by a semicolon. Like the first statement of ours over here is terminated by this semicolon, and then the second statement is terminated by this semicolon. The only prerequisite for this is that you have to remember where to place your semicolons, otherwise all will cause a havoc. Okay, generally in a good practice, it is not a good practice to include two statements on a same line. You should generally follow the other way around, that you should always have a new statement in a new line. Statements can continue over multiple lines. Now in case your statement is becoming very long, like over here it is variable a is equal to variable b plus variable c multiplied by variable d, and the whole is divided by 100. This is a very long statement, pretty long statement. It will not fit into one screen, so you can just put empty spaces, tab or enter over here, but just remember to put this semicolon over here. So computer or your compiler will treat this whole as one statement till it finds this semicolon over here. Okay, so now we have learned something about writing C programs. Now this is an example of the C code components. Okay, so this is the preprocessor directive over here. This code is just similar to what we have already done when we had installed our code blocks and tried to run our first code. Okay, now int main, this is the main function, beginning of the main function. Now this curly brace signifies the opening of the block of the main function. So every function is included inside a block. Okay, so this is the definition of that function. These two lines are commented, as we can see. The execution of this code will always start from the first line of the function. Okay, now printf hello world, this is a statement, and return 0. Main function should always return an integer value, and this is also a statement, and here your block of the main function is closed, so here it is exiting. After that, we learn more about some files in a C program. Okay, so in a C program we have various kinds of files like header files and the source files. Header files generally have the .h extension after them, and source files have the .c extensions after them. Header files are just like directory, like your telephone directory. Okay, they will tell your compiler about which functions are defined inside a C program, and this also contains the prototypes of the functions or the signature of the function. We will learn about the signatures and prototypes of functions when we study functions in detail, but it will tell you how to call a particular function. Okay, so these files also contain the declaration of user-defined data types. Now, this also we will study in detail later on. Header files are included inside the source files or other header files using the #include preprocessor directive. Now, a header file is useless until or unless it is included inside some other source file or other header file. When you include a header file inside a source file, now compiler will search that header file and look for the definitions of functions over there. Okay, when you call a function inside your .c file, compiler will search the definition in your header files. Now, source files are the files that contain your actual function definitions, variable declarations, and initializations. This is where your actual runnable code is there in the C file, and the main function should be in only one of the source files. So you can have multiple C files with various functions in them, but remember that at least one and only one C file should have the main function in it, so that the compiler knows that where to start your program, where to start the execution of your program from. Okay, so this is a graphical layout of the C program, of an example of a C program. So here we have two header files, a.h and b.h. Now a.h is included in one.c. Okay, #include a.h. Now this same file a.h is included in 2.c also, and 2.c is also including b.h. So it will refer to both these header files, and there is another file 3.c which is also including b.h. Now we have to remember that main function should only be in one of those three source files. It cannot be in more than one of the source files, and at least one file should have a main function if the program is to be executed. So this ends our chapter on the structure of a C program. Thanks for watching Edupedia World videos. Please keep on watching Basics of Programming in C language. Thank you.